Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World, and we're here this Monday evening for a special live edition. And I'm joined by journalist extraordinaire, Mr. Paul Abbandonato. How are you, my friend? You good?
I didn't recognise that introduction, I have to say, but I'm very well. Yourself?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. It's
Paul Blues fans are enjoying the summer as well. It's finally getting a bit of
yeah.
weather.
Well, do you know what? I'm almost caught in between because I really hate the summers when there's no tournaments and stuff on. But obviously, with no Wales participation in this particular tournament, it has taken the edge off it a little bit for me. So I'm sort of caught in between both. But it's better than no tournament, I suppose. Is the one thing. At least there's some football going on through the summer. So obviously, Paul, I think the place to start is look the summer started off slow, shall we say? It felt painful at times, and like I just said to you off air, although I felt quite confident that Bulut was going to sign a new contract throughout, there was definitely times, particularly as it went on longer and longer, where I was starting to think, guys, you know, is something happening? Has something fallen apart, or has there been a breakdown here because it just seemed to take so long? But how did you sort of feel throughout it? Were you fairly sure it was going to happen at some point?
Yeah, but only because I was fully aware of how involved in this the chairman Mehmet Dalman was.
Mm-hmm.
He bought Bulut across last year when next to nobody had heard of him, if we're going to be honest with you. He backed him, and he clearly wanted to back him again this summer. And because he was so invested in it, I couldn't see it going any other way. Now, the fact that it was delayed and delayed and delayed meant there were complications, obviously. I know they spoke to at least one other manager, if not two. There may have been more than that for all I know. And look, the club wouldn't have been doing their job properly if they didn't explore other options, if other people weren't as invested as the chairman himself was. But while the chairman remains so entrenched in his views that Erol had to be given a new contract, because of the current financial setup at the club and the money that he and the people that he represents, at the very least, have put so much money in there, and that he is needed to run that ship at the moment, and the Vincent Tan does need Mehmet Dalman. I just couldn't see any way that Mehmet wasn't going to get his way on this. Basically, Simon, it dragged on and on. So clearly there were complications. I spoke to him during the process, and I joked. I said, "Crikey, talk about dealing with two strong-willed characters," and he was right in the middle there, doing his diplomatic role. When you've got a strong character like Vincent Tan on one side, wanting things done in a certain way, a strong character like Erol Bulut on the other side, wanting certain things. And I won't say it was never the twain shall meet, because they did meet, obviously, but they met. I think if it wasn't for Mehmet's involvement, the move would have collapsed at the start of June, if not late May. Certainly in May. I've sort of exaggerated that, actually. I've been a bit conservative. It would have collapsed in May. The fact that he was so involved made me think, look, this deal by hook or by crook will be done. And eventually, of course, they got it over the line.
So let me put you on the spot a little bit, Paul. Do you personally think Erol Bulut is the right person to take Cardiff City forward over the next sort of couple of years in terms of rebuilding and building on what he's already put in place?
That's a really good question, Simon. It's a very basic question, and I don't think it's a yes and no answer. So I get a lot of interaction. I get on social media, I get emails sent to me, this, that, and the other. And very recently, in the space of a day, I had somebody on to me saying that I'm Bulut's number one cheerleader and I need to tone it down a bit. And I had somebody else on to me saying, why do you always criticise Erol Bulut and really unfairly? So, these are two extremes. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying that,
No.
I've long since come to learn in my profession that sport, like politics, like the Welsh language, those are the three elements of journalism that create incredible passions and emotions, if you like. And sometimes people lose rationale with the arguments. They sort of see certain things in a certain way without looking at the bigger picture, dare I say. And you know, Cardiff City is part of that mix, if you like.
Yeah.
I think it would have been, my concern was what kind of manager, who would we have ended up with if Erol Bulut had not stayed for another season or two? That was in the back of my mind. That's not much of reasoning, is it, for keeping Erol Bulut? But that was a genuine concern of mine, nonetheless. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that I just feel it would have been silly to throw away the year. He came to Cardiff a year ago thinking he was invincible, Simon. I've been told this by people very close to him. I know he thinks it himself. He thought he was invincible. He would, if not sail this league, certainly have the team right up towards the top. And the Championship is not like that. It's an unforgiving league. We all know that. He now knows that. And I think it would be silly to lose the 9 months of hard-earned experience that he had from the season just gone, to just cast that aside, if you like, and get somebody else in who might also be inexperienced in Championship football. So, and I also think that there's a good manager in there. I really do. I come back to what we discussed the last time I appeared on this show, which is that for the first 2.5, 3 months of the season, it was really exciting. Cardiff were playing some fabulous football at times. They were getting some good results. There was even a bit of swashbuckling nature to the side, and for whatever reason, it just then fell off a cliff. And I just think that there's I've said before that you don't get to manage Fenerbahce without having something about you. And I think they just appointed Jose Mourinho, for example. They don't, Fenerbahce don't just appoint nobodies. They appoint people who they think have really got something about them as a manager. And I hope that this coming season we get to see that from Erol, but he now must release the handbrake. We've got to see a more adventurous style of football. We've got to see less negativity in team selections, less like-for-like basic substitutions. We want to see a bit of inventiveness, which I think he's got, obviously. So I think it's the right decision to stick with him, Simon. But if he then lets down all the people who backed him by continuing with the negative football that we saw for much of last season, or certainly the second 2/3 of it, if you like, or the 2/3 of it, the last 2/3 of it, if you like, that'll be a letdown to the people who've supported him. And that's just the reason I hesitate on your question about, is he the right person, yes or no? I don't think it's quite as black and white as that. I veer very much towards yes, but there are elements of caution there as far as I'm concerned. Is that fair enough?
And I think, first of all, you make a great point about Fenerbahce, which I think sometimes people gloss over. Like, they don't just employ anybody. But the thing for me is, I've been pretty pro Bulut, I think, all season, even when things were going wrong, because I felt like he had got enough in the bank at the start of the season to show that if we can give him the right personnel and the right things, that he could probably take us forward. However, what I was very clear in saying all the way through the season, when I would be talking about the games or talking to people like yourself, is just because I am pro Bulut doesn't make him devoid of criticism or, maybe analysing what he's doing good, what he's doing wrong. And I do feel that one of the things that has to be addressed almost immediately is the way he sets up at home. I don't mind so much away from home being solid and trying to hit teams on the break, because I think that can be quite an effective way of playing in the Championship, is, pinching a draw and a win here and there by being well set up defensively. And if you've got a striker, like, people forget he played the whole season we didn't have a number 9. If we can get a proper striker in who's going to score goals, those away performances where you are solid you will pick up points on the road. But the home, not so much, not even just the home form, should I say, it's the way of playing at home has to be addressed, has to be I would like to think that people at the club, I did hear a few whispers that there had been kind of a discussion around about the way they were setting up a home. Whether that's the case, I don't know. But I think if he can be a bit more aggressive at home, I think that's a big step in the right direction, because it would be a bit of a kick in the teeth if, come Christmas time, we're kind of all sat here going, why are we still playing this kind of unimaginative, negative football? But much like you, I do agree. I think there is a bit of inventiveness in the manager. And I think if we can support him as best we can in the transfer window, I think also getting the right players out as well as in will be very important. I think I'm excited for the season. I've got to say, I think he can build on what he's done already.
But those 2 points, Simon, are absolutely interlinked. So you're basically agreeing with me when I say that if he doesn't now evolve and play the more adventurous style of football that people want to see, he's letting down the people who backed him quite heavily, including the chairman, but also members of the support base who've supported him through this, and the media, dare I say, as well. But I'd like to think the two are interlinked. And if he can get the better quality of personnel that he wants in that team, and I don't think that team needs as many players as people think, Simon, which we can perhaps come on to. But if he can get the better quality of personnel into that team, I'd like to think that in turn would release the shackles a little bit, and he would feel more comfortable letting them loose on the opposition a bit more. Whereas it was all cautious. It wasn't just, it was the way they set up at home, as you say, with these two defensive mids against teams in the bottom half all the time. Yeah. So in effect, including the goalkeeper, they're playing with 7 defence-minded players, and sometimes 8 when he played a midfield 3 of Siopis, Riles and Wintle, which was on more than one occasion. It was the defensive mindset to all of that as well. And then when you ally that to performances and the woeful run of results at home as well, it just became a chicken and the egg thing. Now, I just hope that the handbrake is released when he gets 3 or 4 really, really good signings through the door this summer. And quality this is a much better foundation to go from this summer than it was last year, Simon. Last year, there was a big influx needed of players, and there were a number of players who clearly weren't going to feature, and they either had to be transferred or sent out on loan. This summer, there's a much, much firmer base from which to build. And because of the involvement of the youngsters, because of the returning loanees who are also young, who will return better players, I'm talking about Isaac Davis, Eli King and Joel Bagan, he has the basis of a very decent squad there already. The key to me then is not quantity, it's the quality that you bring in. And I maintain, Simon, that there are only 3 positions that are really needed to be strengthened at the moment, which are centre forward, obviously. Got to get a dynamic number 8 into that midfield. Got to. And clearly a winger is required. Now, look, we can talk about a left back, a right back, a centre back, a second striker, a second winger, all those sorts of things. Yeah. But already there's quite a lot of personnel at that club. I'm talking about the quality here. They need a really good 9, a really good 8, and a really good winger. And I'm not sure in terms of a starting 11 that you need that much more than that, Simon.
Yeah, I don't think.
So I'm happy to be told otherwise.
No. I mean, I don't disagree with you really. I think the basis of the squad, is.
Well, a lot of people do. They think that they need a lot. They think they need a lot more. You know, a lot of people do disagree with me on this.
Yeah. I mean, I would go as far to say, like, one of my big issues towards the end of the season was the refusal to play Turnbull alongside Siopis at certain points, because I felt like that was a natural fit for the player and for the team. So even on that front, if he was going to make a sort of settled decision to say, right, Turnbull is going to play from deeper, and then you've got, Rolls, you've got Wintle. I still think that Turnbull, I think there's a player there with Turnbull. I felt sorry for him because I feel like he was played out of position a lot. I don't think he likes playing with his back to goal. I think he prefers to have the ball with the pitch in front of him. And he looked at, in the short little spells we saw him from deep, I thought he looked pretty good. And I think for Celtic, when he played as a number 8, he was very creative, very aggressive. But I also understand if the manager doesn't see him as a number 8, then we absolutely have to get someone who can sit next to Siopis, who will be a bit dynamic in the way, you know, one of my criticisms of maybe Joe Rawls, or not so much Joe, but certainly with Wintle, is you'll never see him give the ball to, say, a Colwell or a winger and then go and receive the ball back from him. And I just think my problem is whenever he played Turnbull in that number 10, I really felt like Turnbull struggled. He picked up some good positions, but as soon as he had the ball kind of with his back to goal, he wouldn't take it on the half turn. He didn't look like a player who's comfortable in those areas. Obviously, I would say we need 2 strikers, to be honest, because I look at the strikers which are on the books. I mean, who knows what will happen with Isaac Davis? I suppose that's one big question, which we'll get the answer to soon enough. I know there's certain people who think he should be given the chance to be, you know, one of 2 strikers. Then there's other people who think maybe he's not going to be up to it to play at this level. I mean, and then you've got the added thing of certain big clubs being linked with a move for him. So let me add a quick question for you, Paul, then. I mentioned the other day that I was so impressed with Raheem Conte in his appearances in the first team and some of the stuff I saw from him in the 21s, but particularly his first team appearances, that I said I would be very happy to see him as the kind of the backup fullback. He seems very 2-footed, so he could play backup fullback to left or right. How do you think he will factor into the first team next year? Do you think he will be that involved, or do you think he was only involved at the end of the season due to injuries and the like?
I fear it's the latter, and this comes back to the Bulut factor as well, that I think that not evolving the youth will be a retrograde step in the coming season. I'm not saying they've all got to play, of course they don't, yeah? Mm-hmm. But don't just now let them all go backwards again. You know, there's clear, you know, when they played against Southampton, these kids re-energized everybody. In that last half hour, that was probably the best Cardiff have played since the very early part of the season, given the quality of the opposition they were up against. And it was down to the kids. It was led by Ruben Colwell, but you know, you had Kean Ashford playing well, you had young Louis Giles on the left, you had Conte on the right, and it was like the senior players were galvanized by it. And that last half hour, the fans and the team were at one again, you know, and the fans helped drive Cardiff over the line in that game. So I do think, I would like to think not just Conte, I'd like to think the others get a reasonable chance as well. But at the moment, you have to say that Conte would be a backup right back to Perry Ng as we speak. I think if they do sell Perry Ng, they'll probably buy another right back, and I think that'll probably be the right move. The trouble we've got, I mean, we can go through the squad, Simon, off the top of my head, and by all means tell me what. So I may be missing one or two because I'm just trying to remember these off the top of my head. But you've got Howarth and Alnwick as the goalkeeping options, which is pretty decent, I'd say. Howarth is a very capable goalkeeper at this level, and Alnwick is a good backup. At the moment, you've got Perry Ng, you've got Conte, and you've got Romeo for right back options. You've got Jamalu Collins, Callum O'Dowda, and a returning Joel Bagan for left back options. You've got
and Louis Giles as well,
and Louis Giles, of course. Yeah. By all means, correct me when I'm forgetting people, because I will. You've got McGuinness at centre back. McGuinness had a good season last year till he got injured. I think he's an underrated player. But if they can also get a Nat Phillips there, brilliant. Yeah. But at the moment, I think those two are decent. But they clearly need a backup centre half for those two, I think. Yeah. You've got Siopis, Ralls Wintle, Eli King. You definitely need a dynamic midfielder coming in there, definitely, to play with Siopis, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I think Riles has still got a role to play, but I think you need somebody like Alex Mowat of West Brom. I like,
Yeah.
you know, somebody dynamic who can drive forward, control games and so on. You've then got Aaron Ramsey, Ruben Colwell, and David Turnbull to fit into that mix as well. All right. You've got Callum Robinson, Isaac Davis. You've got Maita. You've got the new centre forward who are coming. You've got the new winger who will come in. There are one or two others there as well, obviously.
Yeah.
So now look, there are imponderables with a lot of those. They're young. Jury's out on Robinson at the moment. I still think there's a player in there that they can really develop. Ramsey's fitness will always be an issue at the moment, but I just like to think with a strong pre-season behind them, people like Ramsey and Turnbull will hit the ground running and potentially have a good season. So there is the depth of a squad there, which is the point I was making at the start. It's about the quality 3-4 incomings there to really kick on, if you like. And Erol clearly has targets. Quite a few of those are from abroad. Whether they get that, you know, when Cardiff draw up a list, they have, you know, striker, they have about 6 people, 7 people on a list. It's probably rare they get the number one, but hopefully they will. But if not, they then go on to the backups and so on. So I'm hoping he'll unearth a gem or two from the continent who we know little about at the moment. But that squad that I've mentioned there, because of the progress the kids have made, because of the returning loanees who I say will return better footballers, because I hope of a good pre-season behind them for the likes of Ramsey, Turnbull, Callum Robinson, it's a decent squad. You know, I don't buy this. Oh, it's full of League One players and all that. You know, I think it's a very, very capable squad. And with 3 or 4 quality additions, I think they can be seriously in the mix for the top 6, Simon.
Yeah, I think it's a good basis for a squad. The one thing I would say is I think what the manager and his coaching staff and the football club as a whole will have to do is they'll have to do a bit of funding themselves in terms of selling players. I think it's also important to get to part ways, shall I say, with anybody who's not on board with Erol Bulut and what his plan is for the team. So obviously there was rumours of certain players falling out with him for whatever reason. I think it's better in those cases that you kind of say, thank you, it hasn't worked out. And, you know, for them as well as the team, because I think everybody needs to be pulling in the same direction. And whilst I do agree with you in, say, Callum Robinson's case, I think there's absolutely a player there. And I thought last year, going into the season, I felt like he was going to be our number 9. I felt like he was the best finisher at the club. And we didn't seem to have any real options, like a main guy who you thought, that's our centre forward. And then I was kind of surprised when he did play, he didn't play in that position. So, but there was clearly a clash there. So I think, you know, there will be clubs who would, you know, take Callum Robinson. I think I'm not sure what's happening with Romeo and people like that. But just quickly on the youth players coming through, I think there's a good group of them at the moment who potentially, if they're managed right by given minutes in the first team and they keep improving, the talent that they have, I want that to become Cardiff's DNA, is that they utilise that they've got. What's the point in having this incredible academy facility if the players hit a wall once they get to, you know, 18, 19, 20, and they don't get the opportunity at first team level, particularly when you look at, I don't know, if we just use Conte impressed last year, Ashford impressed last year. All right, Joel Colwell didn't really get the chance in the first team to play. I thought Louis Giles did pretty well as well. So, you know, they've got to allow those players to build on it in the first team as well. So I would like to see that. We just had a question, Paul, which Reese asked. He asked earlier as well. I just want to sort of put this one to you. He said, Paul, can you answer? Is Rowbury the new assistant manager? If so, what's happened to Bulut's previous assistant? Has he left or has he moved to a different role?
Right, I've got to be careful what I say here, because obviously there are certain confidences I need to keep at the moment, and things could be quite delicate. But in terms of the backroom structure, the backroom changes that were part of Erol staying, and this was seen by the club hierarchy as much as from Erol himself. It was felt that he needs a coach there with championship experience. Anybody coming on board, and I think we were talking about 2 or 3 individuals, anybody coming on board would enhance the current setup rather than replace the current setup.
Okay.
So I don't see Erol's current number 2 leaving. I don't think James Rowberry's title was ever going to be assistant manager. I don't know where that myth has come from. I've had that. Somebody else has sort of thrown that at me as well. He was never ever going to be assistant manager. Okay. But I think there might be some complications. So I'm not entirely convinced that it will go through. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah, which would be a terrible shame if not, because I think he's a brilliant coach. A brilliant coach, and I think he would help Cardiff to know, and he would actually help Cardiff play far more progressive football, I feel, attacking football as well. So let's see how that pans out if that comes in. But I think we can nail that assistant manager thing. He was never going to be assistant manager. I don't think that was ever on the cards. But if it's not James, it will be somebody else. I just hope that it is somebody with championship experience, because I think that's what Erol needs there at the moment.
Yeah, I think I was really excited when I sort of heard of the Rowberry links and him coming in to be part of the coaching setup. Like really, really very genuinely excited by that. And then I kind of heard a couple of days ago there was some sort of issue, and then it's kind of quietened down a bit. So I hope that they can get that through, because I genuinely think that's a really good addition to the coaching staff, not just in day-to-day things and because he's a good coach, but like you mentioned, in terms of being a bit more aggressive in the way we play, he's the sort of coach who will bring that out. So a few people asking about...
I've also got very good contacts within the FAW, Simon, and I know they rate James very highly and don't want to lose him.
Yes.
But that isn't necessarily the issue here. I think the issue is for Cardiff to actually do a deal, and at the moment, let's see if it happens, is the way I'd word it. And if it doesn't, I think it'll be to the detriment of Cardiff, or rather, if it does happen, it will be for the betterment of Cardiff. Let's put it that way.
So a few people asking about free transfers, because we did a video probably about 2 weeks ago now, looking at some of the free transfers who are available. And there's some really big names, but there's some really, really good players available on free transfers this season. A couple, who've played for the club before as well on loan. Do you know if there's any sort of particular, if the club is kind of looking towards that market, if there's any particular players? I know Cody Dramer's one, which gets mentioned a lot. But I think he's just been offered a new contract by Leeds. Now, obviously, whether he takes it is another thing.
Yeah, I get somebody who really knows his football and knows people at the club is always on to me about Cody Dramer. And I know others, clearly he was fabulous for Cardiff, wasn't he? But is Cody Dramer really the kind of right back Cardiff will need for Erol Bulut's side? Is he defensively strong enough for that sort of role? Now, I thought he was a super player when he was here, but he strikes me more as a wing back type of right back who rampages forward all the time. Whereas I think that although Cardiff clearly need fullbacks who start getting forward a lot more, I think first and foremost they need solidity at the back there, don't they?
So I think he's all right defensively. I don't think he's like, I don't think it's
though, is it, Simon?
Yeah,
all right's not good
but
enough.
I think positionally he's really good, and I think his pace gets him out of trouble a little bit. When he gets into a bit of a pickle. But look, if Perry NG goes and we brought in Cody Dramer, I would be relatively okay with that. Because I think when I look at Perry and I look at Jamalu Collins, one of the criticisms which gets leveled at Jamalu Collins a lot is when he does get forward, maybe he's not quite as marauding as some would like. I just think that it's good to have a bit of variety. And I think if you can have a fullback who's defensively very solid, and then perhaps one that does venture forward and be a bit more aggressive. I think that can be a good mix, particularly when, in my opinion, you've got one of the better defensive midfielders in the league in Siopis. Like, one of the things I noticed and I talked about the other week was when Ollie Tanner played at left back, which I thought he did a tremendous job for a winger who was playing out of position, but he did get caught up the field a few times, and Siopis just came across and swept up after him. So he never really, he didn't cost us. And I think having, as long as we get the right partner for Siopis, so that Siopis can just be the midfielder who just sits and sweeps up, I'm not too worried about having that attacking fullback, providing we get the right central midfielder in alongside Siopis. But it's all opinions, Paul, at the end of the day, and I do accept.
Yeah, I don't want this coming across as I don't rate Cody Drama. As I say, I thought it was fabulous when he and Doyle came to the club. I thought they had a brilliant second half to the season when they came in. He just seems to me the sort of person who suits a wing-back system more than a back four. But I may be wrong there. I hold my hands up if I have. By the way, I didn't mention Ashford and Tanner as part of that squad as well. No. There's two more to the mix,
Yeah, it's going to be... Do you know what's going to be really fascinating, Paul, is obviously in pre-season, Erol Bulut and his coaching staff will have a very limited time to look at the likes of Eli King, Isaac Davis, Joel Bagan, these guys who've been away for a year. Now, you'd like to think that the football club has been, keeping a very close eye on their performances and watching them as they've played. Obviously, particularly in Isaac's case, he seems to have done very well. But they will have to make that decision on what they're going to do with those players. They can't, I would imagine, just keep them, if they're not going to play in the first team or, certainly be in the first team squad, they can't really just keep them. So then they got to make a decision. Do they loan them again? Do they sell them? There's going to have to be some decisions, and relatively quick, because certainly in Isaac Davis' case, I'd imagine for a team like us who's got no strikers, you've got to have a look at him at least, haven't you? To see if he's come along and how much that loan has helped him.
I know Burnley are still keen on Isaac Davis, and I suspect if Cardiff get a significant offer, they would cash in. But I don't. Certainly, both last time I spoke to anybody in authority there, no offer had come in. Let's put it that way. But I've always thought there's a player there in him. I really do. I mean, he's got pace to burn. He can take players on, and he's clearly started scoring goals as well now. So I think there's a player there, and I think it'd be a shame if Cardiff let that potential out of the door without fully maximising it or giving it an opportunity to maximise in the first instance, if you like, even if it's as a substitute or something like that. So I think there's a role for him to play. I think there's a role for Eli King to play as well. He seems to have done well in Scottish football at a certain level. He's got stature about him, composure on the ball. So again, Erol will make these calls when he sees these players in training. And I've always felt the jury's been out for me on Joel Bagan. At 1 minute, I don't think he's up to it. Then I think, crikey, there's a player there to work on. So again, I think there's potential there. So you're right. He will need to look at these players and make calls on them very quickly. Maybe their futures will hinge on whether he gets the targets he wants through the door. But I think that they're part of the mix. Again, even if it's as backup players, again, indicates that it's 3 or 4 quality additions that they need this summer, rather than a plethora of numbers, which has been the case in recent years, if we like, in recent summers. So it can probably be a less dramatic transfer window this year. Let's put it that way.
Well, it would be nice. I would love to see Cardiff get their business done swiftly and early in the window, meaning that we haven't got it. We're all sort of watching on deadline day, hoping that we're going to get X player in because we haven't got a striker or we haven't got this or that. I think for a personal point, I think if we could get a fullback, a number 8, a striker and a winger, which is 4, and then a couple of decent loan players who can really contribute through the season, whether that be young players or whether that be players who just need game time. I wouldn't be devastated to see Carl Grant back at Cardiff City. I know some people don't agree with that, but I think as an option, I think he can play through the middle, he can play wide. I think that's a good option to have. Just quickly on Isaac Davis, if we were to sign, and I'm going to use this person as an example, as a purely hypothetical, but just because it's someone who everybody knows. Say Cardiff signed Kiefer Moore as their number 9. If Isaac Davis is then the backup to a Kiefer Moore, but he can also play off the wing, I don't think that's the worst place in the squad for someone of like Isaac's age. He's going to get plenty of game time. I don't think that's the worst place in a squad for him. However, like you said, he's been linked with Burnley. He's been linked loosely with Anderlecht and Monaco, which are all, big clubs. I do think the club will cash in on him. I think that there's potential they might cash in on a few others. Like, I think Romeo, I think Wintle might go, because I look at the midfield. Joe Rose is the club captain and just signed a new contract. Turnbull signed in January on a permanent deal. Obviously, Siopis is Bulut's man. So Wintle's almost the one that they're most likely to cash in on, I think. But it all will depend on what the budget is.
Yeah, Cardiff need a new midfielder. I can't be any more, in my opinion, I can't be any more clear.
Yeah.
In terms of your Kiefer and the theory that you put there, Kiefer, whoever, a really good centre forward, yeah. The way modern day football is played, there's only room for one striker.
Yes.
So then it's not just Isaac Davis, it would be Callum Robinson as well. These are good backups if they're prepared to accept those roles. But Isaac Davis has got genuine pace. He could play on the wing without a problem as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I personally think that's where his strength is. He could certainly be a wing option there. So, and can you imagine a Cardiff team, say, with Kiefer at 9 and with Robinson and Isaac Davis on the bench to come on if necessary? It'd be pretty effective. It'd be pretty scary for some of the opposition, I think. Now, obviously, whether Robinson would accept that sort of position, I don't know. It's up to a manager to manage players. Modern day football's not about 11 players, is it? It's about starters and finishers, to use the modern parlance that's come into sport in rugby in recent times. And there are players, football matches these days with all the injury time or added on time, whatever it's called these days. Football matches aren't over at 90 minutes. They can go on closer to 100 minutes, as you saw in the Southampton game and beyond. So there are, and there are 46 matches. It's a lot. It's relentless in the Championship. Saturday, Wednesday. So rotation is needed. So whereas I fully understand when lots of fans say we need 2 strikers. Yeah, I get all that. But I think if Cardiff can get the right centre forward, be that Kiefer or whoever, and then they have the likes of Robinson and Isaac Davis potential backups, I don't think that's bad, to be honest with you. I think that rather than that second striker, a really dynamic number 8 and a really good winger are more of a must for me.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. And I think having a couple of players who can play through the middle, but, predominantly play wide, like a Robinson or like Josh Windass, for instance, is available on a free, can play wide, can play in the 10, can play through the middle, can play in midfield. Those versatile players are handy in terms of squad management, because if you've got a number 9 who, 90% of the time you want him on the pitch, you want him to be starting, but now and again you need to rotate him. Having someone who plays wide as well, or in the 10 as well, or wherever, means you can get them game time elsewhere, but they can also play through the middle when they're needed. I think that's vital almost to managing the squad and the personalities. Personally, I don't think Callum Robinson will still be here at the start of next season. No. I agree with you, actually. It's a funny one because I fully agree with you. I think there's a player there, but I just think that there's probably been a bit of a breakdown in relationship, communication, whatever it may be.
The other thing you've got to think of when we talk about the number of incomings that are required, because I hear lots of people saying we need at least 2 wingers, and I get why, but again, I don't necessarily agree, because if Aaron Ramsey is playing as 10, Ruben Colwell the idea is for Ruben Colwell to maybe move to the left-hand side or something like that, which isn't his ideal position, but Phil Foden and other really good playmakers play wide. Grealish does it. And so that would immediately block a hole for one of these other 2 wingers, if you like, who people say need to come in. So, of course, we can't guarantee Aaron's fitness, but there's Turnbull in that mix as well. So all of these are part of the pot that Bulut will be looking at right now, if you like, weighing up what's the best way forward, which are the positions we really, really do need to strengthen, we need to prioritise. Where do we potentially spend money for that? Who do we get on a free? Who do we get on loan, if you like? Where do we prioritise everything? And then after that, where are the backups really required? You said, for example, you feel a fullback is needed. I've just said there are 3 right backs at the club, and there are 4 left backs at the club. Yeah.
Yeah. But
now it may be that
there's a few in there which I don't rate or I think are going to go though as well. So, like for instance, I think Perry NG will probably go. Unfortunately, I think Romeo will probably go.
Goes. Clearly, they need a new right back, don't they? I think we can accept
of course,
that.
Yeah.
But at the moment, there is NG.
Yeah,
Romeo,
at the moment, no, I accept that. Yeah,
at the moment. And left back, Jamalu Collins and Callum O'Dowda are not bad options for left back, are they?
I'd rather see O'Dowda play on the left wing, to be honest. Like I think, look, he can do a job at left back. Of course he can. I think he's better on higher up the field. But again, it goes back to the versatility, doesn't it?
It goes back to the versatility, and again, if that is the case, it closes the gap again on another winger. People say that Cardiff need. I think there's been some talk about O'Dowda playing in the centre of midfield as well, which I think is a role he could hold down. That might be something that Bulut looks at. It might not be. Certainly shown no inclination to do that. But O'Dowda's clearly a class act, isn't he? So he probably needs to be in that starting team somewhere.
Question there for you, Paul. CCFC Insider says, Paul, do you see Cardiff revisiting any of the deals that broke down in January?
I can't even remember what those deals were now. Kiefer was the main one there, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah, I think the main one. There was one. Oh, was it Illich? No, Illich went somewhere else, didn't he? Trying to think. We've been linked to so many players.
I'm told they've got a really exciting winger lined up. Who I don't think would have been part of their January plans. I think he only becomes available this summer when their contracts run out at the end of June or whatever. I don't know who that individual is. I've got to be honest with you. He's from abroad. I know that. And there's obviously no guarantee they'll get him either. But he's clearly a priority there. The main transfer target in January was Kiefer Morgan. Oh no, here we go. Kiefer Morgan saga yet again, blah, blah, blah. But Bulut really wanted Kiefer. Kiefer ended, by the time Cardiff made Ipswich an offer in terms of the wages that Ipswich were comfortable with, it was too late. Made Bournemouth an offer that they were comfortable with. It was too late. Kiefer was on his way to Ipswich. I don't think Kiefer's going to be playing Premier League football next season. I really don't. So that will form part of the mix again, which might see Cardiff revisiting that deal, if you like. But it hinges on who else Bulut has got lined up as a potential 9 from abroad. He's given his targets the hierarchy. I guess only time will tell on that, but that's the one I could potentially see revisited potentially, for good or for bad.
I think I said the other day with regards to with Kiefer Moore, I said I just hope the club kind of deal with it quick and kind of get a yes or a no from him, from the club, And if it's a yes, then great, get it done. If it's a no, move on quickly, because I don't think anybody wants to be on deadline day again, waiting to see if Kiefer Moore signs for Cardiff, because it all became a bit of a saga. But look, if we could get him in, I think he's ideal for what Cardiff need. And I think he's ideal for the way we play as well. So I would say that. Peter Bradbury asked a couple of really interesting questions, which I would like to put to you, mate. He says, the first one was slightly off topic from Cardiff, but he says, is there any news regarding FAW and Robert Page's future?
Well, does Pete want him to become Cardiff manager then? Does he, or something? You know, look, I think they conducted a review. I think it was last Thursday.
Okay.
I don't know that they're in any rush at the moment to make a call one way or the other on that. Is probably the best way to describe it. But it doesn't take a genius to work out it's going to be hard for Rob Page to keep his job at the moment. Let's put it that way. What was his other question?
The other question, he says, what does Paul make of City trying to change FFP rules? Is this a sign that Vincent Tan is willing to spend more if allowed?
It's not FFP anymore, is it? What is it? It's P&S now, isn't it? Profit and Sustainability, like I think. I don't know enough about it to pass any sort of sensible comment on that, to be honest with you. I think that Vincent Tan is prepared to release the purse strings a little bit this summer and to go for it a bit more, if you like. But Cardiff's finances are very complicated, aren't they? You know, you think of the sums of money owed to the owner, to the chairman and the group that are backing him. There remains the imponderable of, if they get money back off the Salah deal from Nantes, there's a further imponderable to that, which is how much would that be if that is the case? I suspect all of these form part of the pot when Cardiff try to make calls like this or sort of vote a certain way. I don't know is the honest answer.
Just on the budget, Paul, have you kind of, I understand you probably, you wouldn't be able to say like a set figure, but have you heard what sort of budget Bulut will get? Is it going to be a fairly healthy one, or is he going to have to sell to buy? What sort of thing are we looking at? Because one of the things, just for an example, one of the things which I said I would have liked the football club to look at was Jordan James. For me, is the perfect signing for Cardiff, but financially we probably can't afford him for what Birmingham would ask for a fee. But I said, would they be interested, for instance, in Ryan Wintle and Callum Robinson? Probably. And I think both those players would excel at League One level. But I wondered what sort of budget we'd be looking at, because my dream is to have Jordan James and Siopis play for Cardiff alongside each other. But I don't think it will happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think Jordan James is on Cardiff's radar, to be honest with you. They're looking at more experienced midfielder than that. In terms of the figure, I don't have a specific figure. I don't think anybody has a specific figure. I don't know if those things exist these days, but in modern day football, I know that let's put it this way. I know that the wage budget, and I was given a figure for that, but I'll keep that under wraps now because it'll mean nothing to anybody, to be honest with you. But I know that the wage budget is what is construed in the Championship as a top 6 budget. Let's put it that way. Yeah. In terms of money to actually buy players, clearly in modern day football, you can be dealing with really good loans or really good frees. To me, the money needs to go on a centre forward. I don't know that you're going to get a really good centre forward on a free. You might get one on a loan. Swansea pulled off a coup, didn't they? The other year when they signed, what's his name? It's gone from me now. The guy who went on to play for England.
I was talking about him yesterday. I forgot his name.
I can picture him now, and everybody who's watching this will be screaming the name at the screen.
Yeah,
and all that. But you can get the odd gem that way if you like. Yeah. But I think that first and foremost, money needs to be spent on a centre forward. And what you can then do is, once you've got the really good centre forward, you just, the others could fit into place around that in terms of frees and loans, can't they? No, it's not Eze.
They had the Palace defender, didn't they? Gui, but they had a striker. I can't remember his name. We've had a few questions, Paul, about I'm going to butcher this poor man's name, but Tsunoda and that sort of deal. We've had a couple of questions on that and where he fits in. Like, will he be a Cardiff player? Will he be going back elsewhere? Sort of, what's the plan with regards to him?
I don't know anything. I know very little about him, to be honest with you, Simon. I've never seen him play. I hear rave reviews about him, but not necessarily from people who I would say are in the know at the football club, if you like. Not that I'm dismissing the views of the people who tell me about him. So I would have thought Cardiff probably need. I mean, people tell me there's a gem of a player there, yeah. And if so, he could be brilliant backup to Gutas and McGuinness this season. But I would say that's a bit of a risk for a side that's, as I say, going to have a top 6 wages budget there. And they will probably be looking to sign a more experienced centre half there. And if that is the case, that could end up with, you're talking about players who could be sold, that could end up with Mark McGuinness being sold, for example, because he would fetch a healthy sum of money for the club. I think that would be a mistake personally. I think McGuinness is a young enough, and he's enough of a leader to be part of the foundation around which Cardiff build their future. But I can see the argument because Gutas cracked a bit last season as well, didn't he? It was like the relentless nature of the Championship got to him. He'll be better for that experience, by the way. Another reason that I didn't want Bulut to go, going back to the original question at the start, was it would have meant Siopis and Gutas going as well. And they can be part of the cornerstone around which this season's hoped for top 6 push will be built or can be built. So I don't know, I hear rave reviews about Tsunoda. I need to see him myself to judge him, Simon. Have you seen him play?
Clips.
Interested in your views?
In the clips, he looks very good. But I could edit the worst player that you could think of and make some clips to make him look good. Now, that's not me saying he's terrible, and that's not me saying he's good. It's just I have not seen enough of him to say yes, he's good. I've heard from people who, they know their football, and they say that he's decent and that he should be there or thereabouts the first team this year. I don't know is the honest answer, because I haven't seen enough of him to make a judgment on if I think there's something there. I hope there is, because he can play left back and he can play centre back. So I think, if there was a player there, that would be an absolute bonus for Cardiff in terms of, signings and squad depth. I said to you when we did the podcast previously that my
Tammy
big worry.
Abraham, by the way, Tammy Abraham was the name of the player. I knew it would come to me in the end. Eze certainly didn't play for Swansea. No. So go on, anyway, yeah.
I said to you at the last when we did the podcast in person that my big worry for this summer is that some Premier League clubs will be sniffing around Perry Ng and Mark McGuinness, because they're the perfect age, profile, skill set, attributes for the way the game is played in the Premier League now. And I just think like Mark McGuinness is, teams would look at him, he's good positionally, he's excellent on the ball, and he's young. So I think clubs will look at him, and same, Perry Ng is a bit older, but he's the perfect age and profile for clubs to come in for him. And I worry, I was more worried earlier in the season that the club would kind of cash in at the first sign of sort of money. But actually, when I look at it now, I think we are more like, and this is only a personal opinion, so it could be wrong, and I'm sure people will tell me I'm wrong. I think we're more likely to cash in on Isaac Davis, Ryan Wintle, maybe Romeo, Robinson, NG, than we are Mark McGuinness. I certainly hope so. I said about a week ago, I would be absolutely gutted if Cardiff were to sell Colwell or McGuinness. I would be really, really disappointed if they sold either one of those players, unless it was like ridiculous money.
So what I was going to say when you were going on about those people is that the one who was attracting interest is Ruben Colwell. I know that. I know of one Premier League club who were very, very, very keen to sign him, I'm told. And if Cardiff get silly money, whatever you want to call it, Cardiff would cash in because that's Cardiff's way. Yeah, but it would also, it's a balancing act because they then have to weigh that up against the fact that he's the very future of the football club. So he's the one, not NG, McGuinness, or the others. So I get what you're saying about the age profile and the kind of player they are at the moment. Cole's the one who was really attracting the interest. I'm a big Ruben Colwell fan. I really hope Cardiff don't sell him. But I suspect if a sizable offer came in, Vincent Tam would cash in, if you like. And I suppose who could blame him? Because it goes back to what you said at the start. That's exactly what the academy's about. What's the point of having an academy if you're not going to pay players? The whole point of an academy is you play local players, they take you to new heights, and then you cash in on them eventually when you're a club of Cardiff sort of size, if you like. That's just the way of the world, the way of the football world. But they just haven't, they haven't given enough, because they haven't given enough opportunity to their academy players. They haven't been able to cash in on any of them, which then becomes self-funding for the academy again, if you like. So if that were to happen with Ruben, I wouldn't be surprised, but I just really, really, really hope it doesn't. But it's only a matter of time anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're kind of putting it off, aren't you? I mean, my one thing with selling him is, apart from the fact that I'd be disappointed because I'm a big fan, is I'd be disappointed because, let's be honest, if Aaron Ramsey is fit and sharp and everything, he's probably only going to play about 25 games this season. If you look back at his general average and his fittest season, he's not going to play a lot of, he's not going to go and play 40 games for Cardiff, or he certainly wouldn't expect him to. So you know that you're going to need to rely on Ruben Colwell heavily this year, regardless of whether Aaron Ramsey is fully fit or if he struggles or whatever it may be. We all hope that we can get as many games as possible out of him. But he's at his age, and obviously with the previous injuries and stuff, it's unlikely he's going to play 30, 40 games. So Ruben Colwell's got a massive part to play for Cardiff. And I thought last year he showed that if we can get a striker up there with him and the right players around him, that he's capable at championship level of being the main player. I really thought it was a bit of a coming out show for him last year, even amongst some poor team performances. He was very often the shining light. And the thing which kind of sold it for me is we always look worse when he didn't play. When he was on the bench or he was out, we looked worse as a team. And I think that says a lot.
There were matches where he was substituted way too early for me, and the team just imploded suddenly, And it's silly that a team is so reliant on a 21, 22-year-old like that. But as the season wore on, he became the big hope there, if you like, in the side. And I think the players bought into that as well. So this becomes a massive season for Ruben Colwell now. That was, we know of the potential. We know it sort of bubbled under. We know it's then burst to the surface momentarily and come back down again. If Ruben can produce more regular performances like the last half hour against Southampton when he was name-checked by their own manager, I think it'll be hard for Cardiff to keep hold of Ruben in those circumstances. But it will be great for Cardiff if he does produce those sorts of performances, because the team can only be better for it.
Yeah, 100%. A couple of questions then to finish us off. Sean says, do you think a Premier League team will come in for Perry NG?
A lot of Cardiff fans think so, don't they?
Yeah, that seems to be the chitter-chatter.
I'm not so sure.
So for me, I think if he stays, great. Like, I'm really, really happy if he stays. If he goes, I just hope Cardiff get a good amount of money for him, because I look at it as, and I've said this a few times, in my opinion, the best two right backs in the Championship last year were Perry Ng and Walker Peters from Southampton. If Southampton was to sell Walker Peters now, they would not sell him on the cheap. And I believe Cardiff should not sell Perry Ng on the cheap. So I think they should have their price in mind. And if teams don't match it, then he stays. That would be my
price. And what would that price be?
In my opinion, I wouldn't sell him for less than 4.5, 5 million. But some people will agree, some people will disagree. Because I think he's the best right back. Well, he was in the Championship Team of the Year. I think he was the best right back in the Championship, certainly alongside Walker Peters last year. So I think if you look at fees, generally his age, everything like that, I don't think that's an outrageous fee. For someone you don't really want to sell either. Like, he's a big part of the team. He's a big part of the team. So it's not like we're looking to get him out because he's a problem or anything like that. He's a big part of the football team. He's a leader in the dressing room, and he's also quality. So we shouldn't sell him for cheap, which we have done in the past sometimes. I would like to see us hold firm, and if he wants to go, I wish him well, but let's make sure that Cardiff get a good deal out of it.
Yeah, I'm always sceptical when we talk about good deals with Cardiff, because I remain stung by the fact that Aaron Ramsey was sold for £5 million with no sell-on clause. And people say to me, "Oh, well, he was only 17 or 18." You didn't have to have a football equivalent of a nuclear physics degree to know that there was a genius of a footballer there. That was ridiculous. So I remain stung by Cardiff and sort of getting big sums of money, if you like. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're all burnt historically by a few different deals, but I mean, the Ramsey one in particular, when you've got Man United and Arsenal fighting over a 17-year-old, he's special.
And the thing is,
you get a sell-on clause or some sort of.
And the thing is, history tells us something different now. But at the time, trust me, within football, Aaron Ramsey was seen as the big hope of Welsh football. It wasn't Gareth Bale, it was Ramsey. It was Ramsey who was in the Wales under-16s Victory Shield team that Gareth couldn't even get into, believe it or not. Preposterous. That's another story, yeah? But Ramsey, a year younger, was in that side. And the manager of the team told me, young Aaron wanted to take the corners and head the corners in. That's how good and confident he was. So you've then got Man United and Arsenal. It wasn't just those. As I recall, Liverpool and a few others were very keen as well. And to sell him for £5 million was bad enough, but to have no sell-on clause inserted there was, I don't know, to me that was just madness.
So let me float at you one of my controversial takes, which people disagree with, and I've said it a few times over the last couple of years, and we'll kind of finish off on this, see if people agree, see if you agree. I said that if it wasn't for Aaron Ramsey's leg break, obviously it's well known, I said that he would have gone on to be one of the top 5 best midfielders in Europe consistently, and he would have been up there with the very best midfielders in Europe for that whole period, for his career, basically. And some people disagree. Generally, it's the Man United fans who watched the Rodri Gig show who disagreed. Maybe they're a bit stung by the fact that he went to Arsenal. I don't know, but I truly believe that. Like, I think he's so gifted and so good, and at his peak, I do think that leg break kind of has stifled him a little bit because it's led to more muscular injuries in the years afterwards. And obviously, look at the influence on Wales. I still believe that if he had played against Portugal, we'd have had a real good chance of winning that semi-final. So, it is what it is. What do you think of that for a take, anyway, Paul?
It's interesting. It's funny, actually. I was speaking to one of the Arsenal Supporters Club representatives about why they didn't view Aaron as a legend of the club, because I always used to think of the comparison with him and Mesut Ozil, and Ozil is seen and viewed now as a much better player, and yet at the time I thought Ramsey was the more effective footballer for for Arsenal, I have to say. He he made that UEFA team of the tournament, didn't he, after Euro 2016? There is an argument saying that he was an outstanding player in that tournament, full stop. He stood out with his bleached blonde hair, and he stood out with his football as well. In terms of, it's almost, I can't say he's the forgotten man of Cardiff City, but it's almost like people forget what a special footballer Cardiff have on their books at the moment. And he didn't go away with Wales. He's making these decisions now. He wants to get he didn't go away for this horrendous little summer tour where they drew with Gibraltar, the mighty Gibraltar, and lost 4-0 in Slovakia. But he has made the decision. He wants to get his body more forceful and ready for the rigors of Championship football. And honestly, if we can get a more fit Aaron Ramsey for next season, people forget what a special talent Cardiff have got on their hands there. There won't be a better player in the Championship than Ramsey if he can get going. There remains that imponderable for the reasons you've just mentioned, doesn't there? The injury record isn't good, but I think that he feels that he owes it to Cardiff to really try and get a good season under his belt. And if he does, the idea of him and Ruben in the same team is quite breathtaking. I think you can get the right centre forward, the right winger, and that right number 8 playing next to Ramsey and Siopis. That's not a bad little team there,
Creative, and it's got a bit of bite as well. I agree with you 100%. And I think one of the most remarkable things that I've seen on social media towards the end of the season is people saying that Cardiff should release Ramsey from his contract. And I've seen people saying that because he didn't, because of his injuries and stuff like that. And I was shocked because, much like you, I agree. It's like, if you get him fit, and he's made that choice to stay in the summer, he could have gone with Wales. I'm sure Robert Page would have preferred to have him. He made the choice to get fit and to have a full pre-season with Cardiff. And I think that I thought even for I think he only played like 12 or 13 games last year in the Championship. But for that, it took him a couple of games to get going, but he was starting to hit his stride when he got injured. That goal against, who was it, away, where he scored the rocket from 25 yards. Leicester, of course it was, yeah. Yeah, but it's an incredible goal. He was excellent in that game. And I thought like he was just getting going when he obviously, unfortunately, got injured. But,
the day my friend turned to me before kickoff and said, Paul, we've got the best player on the pitch and the 10 next best worst, which was quite funny, I thought, but a bit unfair on the other players. But I know what he meant. Ramsey, there certainly won't be a better midfielder in the Championship if he can get his fitness up and running again. But it remains a big if, doesn't it?
Of course. And look, age catches up with all of us, and I think he's at that part of his career now where you're going to start, your body is sort of fighting your age. And look, I would love to see the very best of Aaron Ramsey now for this season, because I think if we can get 25 league games out of Aaron Ramsey this year and he's at his best, Cardiff City will be there or thereabouts regardless.
And that was the aim. That was the aim last season. They were saying behind the scenes, if they get 20 to 25 games out of him, they would be more than delighted with that. It obviously didn't materialise. Clearly, he got injured on Wales duty, didn't he? Just before the South Wales derby. Then he played in the South Wales derby. He was magnificent in that game. Him and Carlin Grant were magnificent that day. The 2-0 win at Cardiff City Stadium, and that was almost it then, wasn't it? In effect, but he's been building his body up. Let's hope. He still doesn't appear to have made a call on his Wales future at the moment. Let's hope it is a more robust Aaron this season, but he needs greater help in that midfield as well. That's what I'm saying. I think with the right personnel around that midfield, I think if you can get a midfield of Siopis, a really dynamic player next to him, and Ramsey at 10 with maybe Colwell out wide, I think that's a really good base for the squad, for creative base for the team to work forward from.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I 100% agree. I'd like to see Moet in midfield alongside Cyopers personally, but remains to be seen. Paul, thank you very much for joining me, my friend. Really enjoyed it. Good chat. And thank you to everyone, 500 odd people watching and all the questions and stuff. I apologise if it didn't get to your question. I tried to kind of fit in as many as I could as we were going. We are now 12 days away from City Legends presents Joe Ledley at Splott Con Club, 6th of July, just £10. There is very, very limited tickets available now. So if you do want to come down, come and say hello, ask your questions, get your picture taken, all that good stuff. And of course, hear many a story from Joe. It's going to be another great night presented by Ace Podcast Nation. So please do come and join us. The details are in the description below on YouTube, and they're going across your screen now if you want to get tickets. Paul, been a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much.
No worries. All the best, everyone. The fixtures are out on Thursday week, I think it is. So enjoy,
Indeed.
everybody.
Not long now. Cheers.